Hey everyone, welcome back to Reading with Tatiana. Today I'm doing my book review on The Push by Audrain, and I gave this book a 5 out of 5. I always like to start my videos with a Booktuber Shoutout. So today's Booktuber Shoutout is Eliza's Bookshelf. She does a mix of 2BRs, wrap-ups, consolidated reviews, and I really love the content that she puts out. She also has a very beautiful aesthetic bookshelf in her background. So I'll link her channel down below if you want to check it out. And as always, if you can hit the subscribe button, I would really appreciate that. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. And if you've read this book, The Push, or have any recommendations for me to read in terms of thriller, I would love to hear it down below. Let's start with the year and the genre of this novel, The Push by Audrain. So this novel was published pretty recently in 2021, and the genre I would put it under is thriller or psychological thriller to be specific, and is also Ashley's debut novel, so great job, Ashley. A bit about the author, Audrain. So she is from Ontario, which is in Canada, and right now I believe she lives currently in Toronto. She previously was a director of publicity for Penguin Canada, which is a publishing house, and she actually got into writing because her first son was diagnosed with a chronic illness and spent a lot of time out of the children's hospital, and Ashley was kind of forced to stop working and stay at home for son quite a bit. So this was kind of a blessing in disguise, because during this time when she stayed home and take care of her son, she was able to write and pursue writing, and then The Push came to be, and which is her debut novel. A bit about the story and the characters. So we meet Bliff, who is a new mom, and she is telling the story from first person, so we as the reader is Bliff, and she is, I guess, writing a letter or telling a story to her husband or ex-husband, and refers to him as you throughout the whole novel. And basically Bliff is a new mom or new parent with her husband, and she's having a really tough time with her daughter. And it's more than just the usual, like, oh, the baby cries a lot or that kind of stuff. As the baby gets older, there seems to be some things that are quite insidious or intentional that the daughter isn't such a great trial at, and Bliff kind of like blames herself. And then throughout the novel, we also get flashbacks of Bliff's upbringing with her mom Cecilia, and also Cecilia, her mom's upbringing with the grandma Etta, and how there's this generational trauma of bad mothering and abuse and that kind of stuff. And then Bliff kind of wonders, is she the way she is because of her parents, or is it something that's wrong with her? And she has a really tough time being a new mother. But as time passes, Bliff and her husband decide to have a second child, who is a son. And her son's relationship is really amazing and really great, and everything she expected motherhood to be. So she comes to realize, like, maybe the problem with her first daughter or her firstborn wasn't really her and the trauma that she carried from her mom and grandma, but maybe it's possibly an issue with the daughter. And because this is a thriller, I'm going to stop there about the synopsis, because I don't want to have any spoilers. But this book is very good, and like, it kept me at the edge of my seat the whole time. I mentioned a few of the characters earlier. There's Bliff, who's the protagonist, who is a first-person speaker. There's her mother, her grandmother, her husband, and her two kids. There are a few other characters as well, but for the purpose of this review, I won't really get into them because I don't want to do any spoilers. Common themes and lessons learned. So a common theme I noticed in this book, I'll actually start with a quote from the novel, is marriages can fall apart. Sometimes we don't notice how far we've gone until all of a sudden the water meets the horizon and it feels like we'll never make it back. Listen for each other's heartbeat in the current. You'll always find each other, and then you'll find the shore. So one prevalent theme I noticed for the book is the idea of marriages and how it's a lot of work, and how it's easy to put it on the back end and kind of let things kind of float away. And over time, you realize, like, holy cow, I'm so far from my marriage or my partner. And maybe sometimes it's really hard to get back, and it's impossible. So the book talks a lot about a marriage and her relationship with her husband. A other common one, which I touched on earlier in the synopsis, is the idea of childhood trauma and how it carries into future generations, and how a parent decides to raise their kids can have lasting impacts on their kids. And parents are just people doing the best they can, but that can really have an impact. So if you're ever a parent, if you really think about how you're no longer living for yourself, but you're living for someone else. A minor spoiler that I will say, just because I think it ties into this theme that I noticed, is that there is the writing tool of an unreliable narrator. So a lot of situations that happen in the book, Belief kind of thinks about it and she experiences it and she reflects on it later on when something else comes out to truth. And the common theme that I learned is that it makes me reflect on my life and how I perceive a situation might not be the honest truth or might not be accurate to how someone else perceives a situation. And how you perceive it and how you feel in that moment can have a big impact on how that impacts you as a person, right? So when you have a visceral reaction to something that happens, I guess you need to kind of check in on like, am I having an emotional reaction or is this a logical, rational reaction to the situation? So I thought that was a very interesting common theme that carried through the whole book as well. And a theme that I kind of liked, but I don't know if it was intentional by Ashley Audrain, but I thought it made me think a lot about it when I finished the book last night was, are some people just born evil? Like, are we all just born innocent and it's society and the world that breaks us down? Or are some people just born inherently evil? So I thought that was a very interesting question that I thought about while reading the book. And if you read the book, I would love to hear your answers down below, your thoughts on that question. I gave this book a 5 out of 5, so there weren't too many things I didn't like, but if I had to give one feedback is the chapters are really short in the book. Like, I think the longest chapter is maybe 4 or 5 pages, and it jumps a lot between present day, Belief's childhood, and also Belief's mom Cecilia's childhood. And so it kind of jumps pretty quickly back and forth. So sometimes with the chapters, it's not sure what time frame we're in, and it's not sure who is she talking to or about, which I guess is the point of a thriller because it's kind of supposed to be like not clear what's happening. But it was kind of frustrating that sometimes we have to flip back and read a few things just to see what timeline I was in. So that's the one feedback I have for this book. Things I did like about this book. So the number one thing I like, because it's one of my favorite ways that a story is told in books or movies, is the use of an unreliable narrator. Again, don't want to spoil the book too much, but I really enjoyed that just because there were times when Bliff questioned her perception of events that happened and she replays them in her mind. So I really enjoyed that aspect of the book. Other thing I really enjoy about this book is it really showcased the struggles that a new mother or just being a mother in general experiences. And I feel a lot of things that the main character talks about is things that we all are guilty of having thoughts in our head, but sometimes are too scared to say out loud or just don't have a space to share it with. So I really enjoyed that aspect of the book. Just seeing the 3 women, Bliff, her mother Cecilia, and Edda having those issues throughout their whole lives. 2 other things I like is as the book progresses, we see the peeling back of truth. So like for example with Bliff, she tells her childhood as is in the beginning of the book, and later on we learn and it's revealed further details of her parents' marriage. And I really enjoyed that because it just shows like you just never know everything at face value, and you just really have to think about what you know and what truths are there out there for other people in the situation. Another thing I really enjoyed about the book that I want to share is the breakdown of Bliff and her husband's marriage, just because when it comes to marriages or relationships ending, there's not always someone at fault. It's not like someone's a good guy and bad guy, although of course that sometimes could be the case. Sometimes just 2 people that just couldn't work things out, and they're just people doing the best they can, and sometimes their best isn't good enough. And I just really like that really honest breakdown of their marriage. On Goodreads, this book got an average of 4.09 out of 5, and if you know me and all my reviews before that, anything over a 4 is a guaranteed good read in my books. So first I'll share reasons why people didn't like this book. So reasons why people don't like it is because they thought it was really predictable, it used a lot of common tropes in thrillers. For me personally, I disagree with that, but only because I haven't read that many thrillers. So every time I've read a thriller, I'm always like, wow, that was so crazy, I didn't know that was happening. But I have people or friends that have read thrillers and they're like, yeah, that was okay. Like for example, The Silent Patient. If you read that book, I thought that was an amazing thriller and I didn't see any of the plot twists coming. But I have friends who read thrillers regularly and thought it was pretty predictable. Other reasons why people didn't like the book was similar to me. They felt the chapters were going back and forth between too many characters and timelines, and it wasn't clear who it was being focused on at the time, so you had to go back and flip through. Other reasons why people didn't like it was they thought the chapters were really short, and it was also very repetitive and boring because Belief goes through a lot of internal dialogue in her head, and I guess people didn't really enjoy that. But I think the story is told from her point of view, so that's what was happening in her mind. So For me, it makes sense that it feels repetitive and boring because she's like dealing and digesting the stuff she's experiencing. Good reviews were very similar to what I shared before about things I like, is that people thought it was really good at highlighting thoughts that real mothers may go through in real life and the struggles that mothers go through. And they also thought that it had a very honest breakdown of someone's marriage. So those were really highlights that I think people really related to when they were reading this book. And I think people also really enjoyed the thriller aspect of the book. And I guess, like if you're not someone that reads thrillers often and can't predict it, it is very exciting to read because I was on the edge of my seat the whole time. Why you should read this book, I feel like at this point I'm a broken record. Reasons why you should read this book is, number one, read a different side of motherhood and a marriage that isn't commonly portrayed in society and media. And number two, it's a page turner and it's very short chapters, so it's very easy to just finish in 1 or 2 sittings, in my opinion. One of the favorite things I like to ask people after we read a book is how it made them feel, because if you ask me next week, a month, a year from now, I probably won't remember exactly everything that happened in this book, but I'll probably remember how the book made me feel. So this book, The Push by Ashley Audrain, it made me feel very nervous. And I'm using the word nervous because I don't plan on being a mother, but if it happens to me one day for whatever reason, it just makes me nervous because there's no guarantee that your baby's going to be perfect, and it's not expected your baby's going to be perfect because your baby is just like you and me, a human doing the best that they were given in the world. And it's just really scary to think that if I had a child, that if there's no immediate connection, or what if I was a bad mother, or there's just so many things that could go wrong, and it makes me really nervous. But I think that's a very real experience because on social media, you always only see the highlights of being a mother, but obviously there are downsides too, right? So this book made me feel very nervous. That's my book review for The Push by Ashley Audrain. If you read this book, I would love to hear what you thought in the comments down below. And if you want to join me next time, I am reading a biography of the actor, Canadian as well, Simu, We Were Dreamers, an immigrant superhero origin story. So if you want to join me next time, I will see you guys then. Bye!